Good morning and welcome to the February 5th Super App Office Hours. We appreciate the time that you are taking out of your schedules to tune in for the information regarding the 2021 Super App. Before we get started, if you would, just as a test of our connections and all of our technology, please, either in the chat or by just raising your hand, let us know if you can hear us and that you are seeing the screen share. Okay, looks like we are good on that end. So with that, we will go ahead and begin. Before we start with the slides, just a quick reminder that if you have questions as we go through the presentation, please enter your questions into the chat. Include your contact information. We will have a pause at the end of the presentation to respond to questions that have been entered. We ask that you include your contact information for any situations in which we may need to reach out and gather some additional information to provide you with a response to the question that you may have entered. So the agenda for today will include, for the 21-22 school system planning review, federal support, there's a reminder. From the grants management team, there are a couple of reminders, including some general reminders, as well as some information around indirect cost. And then we will pause for a time for question and answer, and then, of course, follow up with support that is offered throughout this process. So the 21-22 School System Planning Review Super App Reminders. School Improvement Best Practices Update. This is Best Practices WT 4.1. Super App Item WT 4.1 enables school systems to request optional competitive funding for CIR schools to implement a variety of school improvement practices. When you're requesting funds in Super App, you should list each CIR school and the best practice to be implemented at each site in the additional information box on the School Improvement Best Practices, again, WT 4.1 tab. Here's an example of the information you should include. As referenced above, you would provide the school name and then include instructional leadership team support, teacher collaboration support for Pelican Middle, instructional team support, and teaching standard support, and then Mardi Gras High, instructional leadership team support. So again, you're listing each of your CIR schools and the best practice or practices that you're going to implement at each site in the additional information box on the School Improvement Best Practices tab. Also, in the additional information box, you should include a funding request of $8,700 per site for portal access and coaching support at each CIR school, which is implementing at least one best practice. So adding to the example from the previous slide, a correctly completed additional information box is below. So you can see that we carried forward in the additional information the school sites and the best practices that will be implemented at each school site. And then we've added the additional funding request for portal access and coaching support, and indicating that it's for the 3 schools at $8,700 each, which would be a total of $26,100. So again, you want to be sure that you're including each CIR school site, the best practices that will be implemented at each site, and then the funding request of $8,700 for portal access and coaching support. Literacy coaching and intervention updates. So literacy coaching and interventions is question WT 5.1. This enables school systems to request optional competitive funding for CIR and UIR academic schools to support the salary and benefits of literacy coach positions. When requesting funds in this area, identify the following in the additional information box on the WT 5.1 tab. You want to include the name of each CIR UIRA site to be supported by a literacy coach, and an overall summary of the percentage of time literacy coaches will support teachers in grades K to 5, 6 to 8, and 9 to 12. Note that your total percentage should equal 100% and represent the time of all literacy coaches. So again, we've provided an example here in the additional information box for WT 5.1 literacy coaching and interventions. You want to include your CIR, UIRA sites, and then the time spent by the literacy coaches supporting the teachers. So the example here, time spent supporting K to 5 teachers at all CIR, UIRA sites is 40%. Supporting 6 to 8 teachers is 25%, and then supporting 9 to 12 is 35%. And as you can see, again, making sure that the total percentage equals 100%. So what are our February key actions? This information can be found on page 13 of your school system planning guide. The link is provided in this deck. So once all your information has been entered in Super App, the planning lead verifies accuracy and receives approval from the school system leadership. The planning lead ensures submission of the application by the due date of February 12th. So again, we are in the final stretch of completing the 21-22 Super App. So again, once you have verified the accuracy of the information and received approval from your school system leadership, ensure that you have submitted the application by the February 12th deadline. CIR, UIR review process and allocation of competitive funds. So once applications have been received on February 12th, the LDOE staff will begin reviewing submitted plans for the alignment to the CIR and UIRA requirements. Should LDOE require clarification of a supplied response, or in the event a school system has not met all CIR, UIRA approval criteria, in mid-March, LDOE will return the school system Super App for revisions. At the same time, LDOE will also provide each school system with a document that specifies areas of needed clarification or revision. In mid-April, LDOE will provide each school system with a document detailing final approval status, competitive funding allocation, a list of eligible expenditures, and a recommended approved CIR, UIRA implementation timeline. So again, just to recap on your submission at February 12th, LDOE will begin reviewing those CIR, UIRA plans in mid-March. If there's any clarification needed or any revisions, LDOE will provide a document that specifies the areas for which clarification or revision is needed. And then in mid-April, LDOE will provide you with a document detailing your final approval status, your competitive funding allocations, eligible expenditures, and the recommended approved implementation timeline for CIR and UIRA. Federal support has provided a non-public reminder. So again, just keep in mind to upload the intent to participate and affirmation of consultation and agreement forms. Your intent to participate form must be uploaded with the February Super App submission. So that intent to participate is a required upload for the February submission of Super App. Your affirmation of consultation and agreement must be uploaded with the second super app submission. So that will be in the follow-up submission, not the February 12th, your affirmation of consultation and agreement. Spell out the non-public schools and school district names. Please do not abbreviate those. Upload certified mail documentation, green cards, and mail receipt only if the non-public school has not returned the intent to participate form declining services. So again, if you have not received an intent to participate form declining services, you should upload certified mail documentation such as green cards or mail receipt. And do not upload non-public needs assessment forms and consultation agendas. So those are not needed as an upload. From the grants management staff, we have some 21-22 super app reminders. Again, a couple questions have come in. Keep in mind that as you go into budget, your funding must be invested on the allocations tab prior to the funds being available on the budget detail page for budgeting. So once you are ready to work in your budget detail to identify your direct charge expenditure, you must first go onto the allocations tab and invest the funding in the respective domains. And once that is complete, the funding will appear in your budget detail. The non-public budget detail is not required for this original submission of Super App. So the February 12th deadline submission, you do not need to complete the non-public budget detail. Again, the February 12th is the deadline for the Super App submission. The submit function will be available by the close of business on Monday, February the 8th of 2021. Right now, that functionality is not available. You are able to run your consistency check and be sure that the application is in a posture to submit once the submit function is open. However, at the moment, you cannot submit, but that functionality will be made live by close of business on Monday, February the 8th. And just a reminder, as mentioned in an earlier slide, LDOE will return Super App applications for revisions if warranted. The revisions will be relative to CIR, UIR plan, or your formula budget reviews. So as mentioned before, the CIR, UIR plans may need some clarification or revision, or if needed, if there is something within your formula budget reviews, the applications will be returned if warranted, and that application should be resubmitted within 7 days of the receipt of the application. So once that application is returned, if you receive an application returned for revision, please resubmit that application with corrections within 7 days of the receipt of the application. All of this is just to ensure that everyone is in a posture to receive those competitive allocations by mid-April. Just wanted to bring back to the attention any student data count questions you may have. So again, the data loaded in EGMS for 21-22 Super App is the age 5 to 17 student counts. If the data that was loaded does not align with the data that you have from your FTP site, just know that either count will work for your targeting, rank, and serve purposes. So either the data, the 5 to 17 student count that was loaded into Super App for you, or the data from the FTP site will work for your targeting, rank, and serve purposes. If you are going to replace that data that was loaded into Super App, be sure that you're in a posture of passing the audit protocols. And also, if you're replacing those provided counts, ensure that you do not include pre-K counts. So if you're going to replace the data that was loaded with your FTP data, then ensure that that FTP data excludes the pre-K counts. Budget indirect cost. I know we shared this in the last office hours, but just wanted to keep this once again on as a reminder to avoid as many EGMS warning or consistency check errors as you work in the Super app. We have this recommended sequence here to help avoid some possible loops with indirect cost. So step one that you should complete when going into the Super app for budgeting is complete the required fields on the ESSA Equitable Share page. Remember, on this page, it will be asking you for student count. It's also the area where you will reserve for Title II and for Title IV. You will reserve your indirect cost amounts that you're going to budget and any excluded cost. So step one, complete that ESSA Equitable Share page. Step two then is to go to the allocations page, as I mentioned earlier, and invest the funding across the domains. Note that the amount available for Title II and Title IV will already have the equitable share deducted. So when you complete that equitable share page, Title II and Title IV automatically takes out the equitable share as well as the reserved indirect cost to provide you with your total available on the allocations page for investing. Step three, create your expenditure lines for your direct charges that will be budgeted in the detail pages, and complete the IDC, the indirect cost, for all of your titles, for all of your funds, except Title II and Title IV. So all of your titles, all of your fund sources, other than Title II and Title IV, you will budget your indirect cost on the budget detail page. Once that's complete, then at step four, your final step, you should navigate to the budget indirect cost tab, which is in the admin section of Super app for Title II and Title IV only, and that's where you will budget your indirect costs for Title II and Title IV. We do have one just 2021 Super app reminder, and that's simply that you need to be sure that you create an amendment to budget your final allocations. Remember, those allocations were loaded in January at the same time as your estimated allocations for 21-22. So just a reminder that you do have final allocations in your 2021 Super app. You need to go ahead and create an amendment and budget that funding, and remember that your funds must be budgeted and approved to allow for reimbursement of the additional funds. So any increase you may have received due to your final allocations before that can be reimbursed to you, those funds must be budgeted and approved. All right, so at this time, we're going to take a little pause and go back and take a look at the questions that have been entered into the chat. So give us a minute or two, and we will come back with responses to any questions that may have been entered.
Good morning, everyone. Randy, can you hear me? This is Pernell.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, so there's a question in the chat box. I think that all of our school systems could benefit from hearing. Yes, there recently we did include additional funds for ESSER incentive funds, and they are targeted for the tutoring initiative by the agency. And so just want to encourage all school systems to supplement those as needed with relevant other federal program resources to make sure you have a complete tutoring program to address the needs of all your students. So yes, those funds that we recently loaded in the Strong Start application for the incentive funds are for your tutoring program. So Ms. Watson, the question regarding can they also be used for credit recovery, are you referring to the incentive fund?
Yes, the incentive fund.
No, those are strictly for tutoring. We encourage you to use your other federal resources if you have some available for credit recovery. It's definitely an allowable expenditure under Title I. And also your ESSER 1 formula funds also could be used for credit recovery. Just make sure the recovery is related to the response to, prevention of, and preparedness for COVID-related activity. So the question is, where were those funds added again? They were added in your Strong Start application with your ESSER incentive funds. Mr. Littleton, can you see the question regarding the Carl Perkins and the charter?
Give me 1 second here.
The question is, we're a single site charter school. We participate in a consortium for charters for Carl Perkins. We didn't receive a direct allocation. Do we still need to complete the Perkins section of the super app?
Okay, yeah, thanks for reading that. I was having a little trouble accessing the questions, but yeah, great question. So as a member of the consortium, you do not have to complete that. The lead agent for the consortium will provide the responses for that Carl Perkins sections in their super app. Yeah, so this will be handled just as it was last year. The lead agent will be the responsible party for completing that section.
All right, we see a question regarding when will the refunds be loaded into 21-22 Super App? Great question. So we usually receive the spreadsheet on the LEAs that qualify for REAP during the March timeframe. And so once we receive the eligibility spreadsheet, we'll be looking at possibly Lake Spring adding those REAP recipients. It'll definitely be done before July 1. So we're thinking about probably Mayish and everything, but we're still awaiting on the final document from Ed in terms of who qualifies. And just to add a little bit there, we didn't, in the past, when we've loaded the estimates for REAP, we found that, you know, if an LEA fell off of the eligibility list, we would wind up taking funds back from them. So we wanted to avoid that this year and just only load those LEAs that we know meet the requirements to receive their REAP funds. So that's the rationale why those weren't included in the initial release of the formula fund. Oh, okay. I see a question that says, what are refunds? I think you're referring to the REAP funding that I was just discussing. That's the rural education federal funds we receive from the Department of Ed. I think that's what you're referring to. And I may have sounded like I said refunds. Thanks for your question.
We have a couple of questions related to CIR and UIR schools. The first question, are only CIR and UIR schools eligible for funds in school improvement best practice? So item WT 4.1 for school improvement best practices only has competitive funding available to CIR schools. Another question we received, I'm a bit confused about how to handle the K2 content leader. Would you elaborate? So this one is a little tricky because there are two very similarly named things that are different. There are K2 literacy content leaders. So these are very similar to our traditional ELA content leaders. This training is though focused on grades K2. That's one item, and that's Super App item WT 2.2. For those K2 literacy content leaders, school systems with CIR and UIR academic sites can request up to $3,000 to train one of those. The different but similarly named thing are our literacy coaches, which are new this year. And this funding can be requested in item WT 5.1. And this is a match of funds. So essentially, if a school system is able to contribute up to $50,000 of their own federal, state, or local funding, they can request a match in competitive funding to support the salary and benefits of that literacy coach position. So for example, if the school system is able to supply $35,000 of their own funding, they could then request up to $35,000 in competitive funding for a total of $70,000 to support the salary and benefits of a literacy coach position.
So just a reminder, if you have any additional questions, please continue to enter those into the chat while the staff continue to look at any questions that are being submitted. Just a reminder, the support that you have around the completion of the Super App, support for completing the Super App is provided through the School Improvement Library, our weekly newsletters, the school system monthly calls, the Super App planning support calls, school systems relations team, and of course office hours that we hold. If you have any additional questions once we have finished today's office hours, please be sure to send that information in via email to LDOE, Grants Help Desk at la.gov, and please include in your subject line Super App. That helps notify the staff that are manning the help desk that this is Super App related, and they know that there is the impending deadline. So by placing that in the subject line, it makes sure that their attention is aligned with this deadline. So we'll give the staff another couple minutes to just continue working through the questions as they come in. So we do have a question, are the office hours for next Thursday at 10 still going to happen? So yeah, the final office hours will occur on Friday, February 12th. So that office hours will be on Friday, February 12th at 10 a.m. And it will use the same webinar information as what was used for today's login. So again, the final office hours, Friday, February the 12th at 10 a.m. using the same webinar information that was used today. All right, Mr. Cook, Mr. Hunter, are there any other questions that we have to address at this time?
No, at this time, we've supplied responses to all the questions.
All right, so again, just bear in mind that you do have these areas of support that are on the screen right now, as well as reaching out to the help desk with any questions you may have. And just a reminder, a link to the deck is posted right now in the chat. So you can actually access the deck via that link. Again, we want to thank you for your time. We know that each and every one of you are very busy, and we appreciate all the work that you do to support our students, and know that we are here to support you. Again, thank you, and we will speak with you again on the Friday, February 12th.
Mr. Littleton.
Yes.
Oh, no, you just said it. I just wanted to be clear. I'm not sure if an announcement went out, but someone asked a question about an office hours for next Thursday at 10 a.m. Just make sure that it is going to be on Friday the 12th instead of Thursday. Just want to make sure everybody was clear on that.
Yes. As Mr. Cook stated, that office hours will be on Friday, February the 12th. So, Mr. Cook, any closing remarks at this time?
No, we're just grateful for everyone taking the time to hear what we had to share. And we appreciate each question because that's our goal as an agency, to support you and provide you the information that you need to be successful in submitting your application and everything. And I guess I don't want to get anyone anxious, but just keep logging in to the EGMS in case we happen to get the application ready a little early next week. So we don't have a date or anything, but just keep checking every day. That's all I'd like to add.
All right. And again, we thank each and every one of you, and looking forward to speaking with you next week. Thank you.